for joining us. This is an extraordinarily difficult time for Vermont. And I know that as Vermonters, we are unaccustomed to facing challenges as horrific and heart-wrenching as what we are facing over the last 24 hours. I just met with Lara's dad and Tim's brother. And I can tell you that Lara was an extraordinary human being who, as her dad just said, dedicated her life to Vermont's children. I think it's worth remembering at this moment that as we as Vermonters try to make sense of this senseless act, as we try to understand and come to grips with the details of this senselessness, as our hearts throb and as our hugs go out to Lara and the other victims of these tragedies and these crimes, that we remember that we have so many good people in Vermont like Lara who dedicated her life to our children, to our most vulnerable children, and to strengthening their chance of success. I'm going to speak carefully, as will everyone here today, about the details of the tragedy that we're facing, because we all know that it's an ongoing criminal investigation, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize it. But as we try to answer the questions that we all want answers to right now, it's important to know some details. We all know, as has been accurately reported in the press, that Lara's life was taken from her as she left work yesterday. What we learned today is that on the way to taking Lara's life, the lives of Rhonda Herring, Regina Herring, and Julianne Falziano, as reported in the press, were also taken based upon what we've read in the press. As you know, we are still undergoing an autopsy or autopsies, and we cannot officially confirm that until the autopsies are completed. But it is our belief that Julianne Falziano, who was the aunt of the accused murderer, and her cousins, Regina and Rhonda, also had their lives taken from them. These events are extraordinarily unusual in the state of Vermont, where we take care of each other, where we care for each other. We will try and answer questions as quickly as we possibly can. I know Vermonters have a lot of questions. I know they want answers. I assure you we will get you those answers and the specifics as soon as we possibly can, without in any way compromising the criminal investigation that is currently ongoing. I want to thank the people who have worked so hard over the last 24 hours to do the work that we need to do to bring about justice. I want to thank the Vermont State Police. I want to thank the Barrie City Police, the Berlin Police. I want to thank the Attorney General's Office and the Washington County State's Attorney. I want to thank Mayor Lozon and Lieutenant Governor for their good work. All those that have come together have been extraordinary. But I want to give a special shout out to the Vermont State employees. Every day, hundreds and hundreds of hardworking people like Lara go into the field in very difficult circumstances to ensure that our kids have a brighter future. They do that knowing that they take some risk. I want to say to each and every state employee, to our DCF hardworking staff, to our hardworking folks at the Department of Education who went through the horrific incidents yesterday, we have your back. We care deeply about you. We are grateful to you. And I know that Vermonters join me in saying at this tragic moment, thank you for the service that you give to the state of Vermont that makes this state a better place. I also want to emphasize this point. With all the good work that we're doing, I want to assure Vermonters that there is no reason to believe, there's no reason at all to believe that anyone's safety is threatened right now. Not our hardworking state employees, not law enforcement, not the public at large. We know that these incidents were horrific and absolutely heartbreaking. We also know and firmly believe that this was an isolated attack based upon the person that we believe that we have in custody, who is the alleged perpetrator of these crimes. There were not other people involved that we know of. No one else is directly threatened in any way. I turn it over now to Colonel Matt Birmingham, who will give you an update on some of the law enforcement developments that we're currently working on. Then I'll turn it over to Hal Cohen, our secretary, and Ken Schatz, the commissioner, as well as Chief Bombardier, who's going to say a few words on behalf of the family. So thank you for joining us. We will answer questions at the end, and I'm going to turn it over now to Colonel Matt Birmingham. And Colonel, thank you for your great work.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate it. So I'm going to make a brief statement about the events that took place today. Before I do, though, I do want to reiterate a couple of points that the Governor made. The first being that this is an active and ongoing investigation. We have many law enforcement officers devoted to this right now, from the state police, the Barre City Police Department, Montpelier Police Department, and we are putting a lot of manpower into this at this time. So the details will be limited in what we can provide. I also want to reiterate that there is, at this point in the investigation, no threat to the public, and we want to make that point very clear. The events today began at a little after 8 o'clock in the morning. We received a 911 call. The Berlin Police Department responded to residents on Airport Road for a report of 3 adult deceased females in the residence. The state police were called in to assist with that call. We responded with our major crime unit, as well as our crime scene search team, to assist in the investigation. They are still on the scene currently, and they are actively processing evidence. We have detectives out in the field conducting multiple interviews at this time, and we are continuing to pull the evidence together to help us paint a picture of the course of events. We are working very closely with the Berlin Police Department, the Barre City Police Department, and other law enforcement officers and agents right now to ensure that we do a complete and thorough job on this investigation. We will be available to answer questions at the end, but that is the initial statement that I'm going to provide at this time.
Thank
Governor?
you, Colonel Birmingham. Secretary Cohen.
I guess the first thing I want to say is that my heart goes out to Lara's family and to her colleagues and friends. This is really devastating and very personal. Lara is a member of my synagogue. I knew Lara and her children. This is really impacting all of us here in this community and all of our DCF staff and AHS staff. Right now, my first priority is the well-being of those staff, and we have arranged for Washington County Mental Health a crisis team to be in place on Monday morning at 8:15 to meet with staff. We are also coordinating efforts with our employment assistance program, and all employees across the state will have access to an employee assistance team. We're also in the process of reviewing all of our different security protocols. I also want to say, you know, I've been in this job only 7 months, and in that 7 months, I have to say that I have worked and I am working with some of the most professional, dedicated, compassionate people that I've ever worked with. I am very proud to be a state worker. And the people who I work with and the people who are in the field are truly heroes. They go out every day and they face very, very difficult circumstances. And Lara was one of those heroes, and we will really miss her.
Thank you. I'll keep it short. Frankly, I appreciate the governor's comments and the secretary's comments. They said all the things that I wanted to say in terms of providing you with information. So I will just simply say that one of the things that I've really appreciated over the last few days is really an outgoing of support from all corners in terms of people recognizing and appreciating Lara in particular, but also generally the task and the challenge that social workers face every day. So we really do appreciate it. We're going to do the best we can to continue to provide that service in a meaningful way for Vermonters.
Thank you, Ken. Chief.
Evening. I've been asked to read a statement by Lara's family. At this time, the family of Tim and Lara are understandably in deep sorrow. They wish to thank everyone in the community for their kindness throughout this ordeal. His family and extended family would ask that all concerned continue to respect their privacy at this time, and that hopefully this terrible tragedy can create awareness and support for those dedicated professionals who devote so much of their energy to ensuring the welfare of our children. Thank you very much.
We'd be happy to answer questions if you have them.
Will Ms. Herring, Jody Herring, face charges on Monday at her arraignment in connection with the 3 deaths that were discovered today?
Let the Attorney General take that one.
At first, I want to make clear that since State Attorney Williams is a witness to the incidents that took place late yesterday afternoon, he could not ethically prosecute any related case and appear as a witness. So we've been asked to take over, the Attorney General's office has been asked to take over prosecution of the case for which Ms. Herring is currently incarcerated and any related other cases that come up. She is scheduled to be arraigned Monday afternoon, and we have not yet seen, actually, the investigation of all of the matters is very active and ongoing, so we haven't seen charging paperwork yet. I assume that we will either sometime tomorrow or Monday morning, but there will be an arraignment Monday afternoon. As to what charge and how many, that remains to be seen.
Is it your expectation she'll be charged in all 4 deaths?
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. There's a lot of work that, as the Colonel suggested, is being done in the investigation. That's possible, but we'll see. We're not going to rush to judgment here. There will be an arraignment Monday afternoon on at least one charge, whether it's Monday or at some point in the future there might be additional charges, but we're going to let the investigation get done or get a lot further down the road before we make that call.
Did DCF have any reason to believe that Ms. Sobel may have been in danger?
No.
Did Ms. Herring make any threats towards Ms. Sobel, to your knowledge?
We're not going to talk about the specifics of the case, except to say that there was no reason to believe, other than the fact that our social workers doing the work that Lara dedicated her life to are at risk in some way every single day. There was no reason to believe that the risk here was any greater than all of the hard-working employees that are doing similar work every day.
Was there bulletproof glass at the office where she works?
No. And I should point out, as you know, she wasn't murdered in the office. She was murdered in the parking lot. I just want to say a word about, I spoke about Lara's family because I just had the pleasure of meeting with Alan, Lara's dad, and Matt, Tim's brother. But we're also equally concerned about Rhonda and Regina and Julianne's family members, and I'll be reaching out to Emma and Emma's dad, who's in Massachusetts, and others who also lost their loved ones. I just came tonight from the one time a year vacation I take with my 2 daughters, and I can tell you that there's nothing more precious than daughters, and seeing what Tim and Alan are going through right now, and Matt and the entire family. I think it's worth our remembering in crises like this, and tragedies like this, and senseless acts like this, that we have to take tragedies like this and turn it into something positive. And I bet if Lara were here and could have a word right now, she'd ask us to do what her dad just told me he always did, as did her mom, when they got off the phone or had a conversation. Told them they loved her, told them she was the most special thing to them. Rhonda and Regina and Julianne also have family members who are grieving.
Did Jody Herring have any prior convictions?
I'm not going to comment on that because the details of her involvement with the state are confidential at this time.
Governor, this appears to be premeditated. Can you speak to the time frame of maybe how long the alleged shooter was waiting outside the
I'm sorry.
How long the alleged shooter was waiting outside the office?
You want to take that?
Yeah, we're still in the process of the investigation on this. There's still a lot of facts that we need to put together, and those are some of the facts that we look to be able to put together as we move forward. Again, as far as the status of the investigation, to some extent we are in the infancy of it, and we want to make sure that we look properly and closely at all facts, and we will do that over the next few days, and we will go where the evidence takes us in this.
Have you had a chance to review what kind of gun
we can't really talk about any of the specifics about those. We're waiting to get some more evidentiary evidence back and do some further analysis on that.
Have you had a chance to review the surveillance video outside the office?
Again, we have to be somewhat limited at about what evidence that we can talk about at this point, and we can't talk about some of the things that we have done for evidence and what may or may not be evidence.
Can you remember the last time there were this many murders at once in Vermont?
I mean, I think that all Vermonters are as shocked, dismayed, horrified, and grief-stricken as all of us are. And the answer is, I cannot remember in my lifetime 4 people being murdered in Vermont by the same alleged perpetrator.
Governor, how should state employees approach Monday morning as they go back to work, especially those that are in DCF or human services?
Well, first of all, they're going to need a lot of love and support. Secondly, and I hope Vermonters will join me in giving them that support, secondly, we're going to be obviously reviewing all safety concerns and making sure that we take all necessary precautions that are sensible. I'm also going to be personally meeting with employees. I know that Secretary Johnson is going to be joining me in some of those meetings, and we'll all be reaching out, particularly to those who witnessed some of this horrific events. So, we're going to do everything that we possibly can to keep folks safe. Let's remember that as horrifying as this is, there is no reason to believe that outside of this incident, people have any reason to fear for their safety to any greater degree than they always have. In other words, this was a solo act carried out by the alleged perpetrator.
How many witnesses were there?
We can't tell you exactly how many witnesses there were because it's a criminal investigation. We can tell you that there were, as has been reported in the press accurately, there were plenty of people around.
Was the Washington County State's Attorney an active participant in helping at the scene?
Yes. Yes, and that's why he's turned it over to the Attorney General's office.
Can you characterize his involvement at the scene?
I don't know the extent to what his involvement was. The investigators may have more information.
We
than
can
I
tell
do.
you with confidence he was a witness. We probably shouldn't comment much beyond that.
And the suspect, is he cooperating with the authorities?
And again, that's something that we can't comment on in regard to that.
What was Laura's job title?
She's a social worker.
Social worker?
She was a DCF social worker, yes.
Licensed?
I just want to say this. Not only was she a social worker, but I've had so many people call me to say she was an extraordinary social worker. I mean, as her dad just said to me, she wanted to spend her life making life better for Vermont's most vulnerable kids. Let's remember that these folks are a combination of savior, intervener, psychologist, law enforcement, most importantly, coach in trying to take very, very difficult family situations and make sure that the kids are protected and that they have the best chance possible to succeed. There are no right answers. They are terrible choices. There are often never very good alternatives. And the work that Lara and her colleagues do is truly hero stuff. It's the stuff that you end your career going, wow, I made a difference every single day in the lives of children that desperately needed me.
Is Jody Herring's daughter in the custody, or child in the custody of the state?
I'm not going to comment on that, except because I can't. So I won't comment on that. I can tell you that I guess it's public. I think it's public that her youngest daughter, Emma, is living with her dad.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Did you get spellings of, is it J-O-D-Y or J-O-D-I, and the victims in Berlin today? Can we get their names?
And their ages.
Spellings and ages?
It's been reported in the press, and it has not been confirmed yet because we're waiting for the autopsies to come back, that the victims were sisters, Rhonda and Regina, R-E-G-I-N-A Herring, and Julianne Folzerano, which is F-O-L-Z-O-R-A-N-O. Julianne was the aunt of the alleged murderer. Rhonda and Regina were the cousins of the alleged murderer. The sisters were in their 40s, we believe, and we believe Julianne was in her 70s.
Does it J-U-I-A-L-A-N-A?
Say that again? Julie.
J-U-L-I-A.
Okay, we'll get you the spelling.
I think it's I-E, but you're asking a dyslexic to spell, which is always dangerous.
Do you know their ages?
I don't know their specific ages. I know the sisters were in their 40s, and the aunt, Julianne, was in her 70s.
Are you sure about the spelling for Folzerano?
No.
It's different than the husband's obituary.
Is it? Thank you. So check don't go on my spelling, never do. It's always a bad bet. But we'll get you the spelling, Dave. Thank you.